Interesting, first, the sustainable consumption and production. It's been around. I mean, this has been articulated for nearly 20 years in various EU policy and UN and OECD policy. But the first interesting observation is sustainable has been replaced by the word responsible. And I think it's kind of a curious substitution of terms, and maybe that's this drive to assign responsibilities, not just that we all engage with this, but it's what are you going to do? And I think that's really what the word responsible brings to this. It brings home that yes, it's our individual responsibilities, our national, our corporate, and indeed our household responsibilities. So it's quite an interesting term just to start off the reflection on what this might be. But what is it? Is it the seemingly impossible? Yes, of course it is. We had a famous politician who once said we're living way beyond our means, and that's true now, actually, in the context of this discussion, as it was then in an entirely different discussion, But nevertheless, it's and another political quote is, doing more with less. Again, this has absolute resonance with sustainable consumption and production, what we're trying to do. And it's trying to live well within our means. I mean, that's ultimately what sustainable consumption and production is about, living well within our means. Now, it has many other names, and you would have heard things like green economy, circular economy, resource efficiency, green growth, sustainable competitiveness. These are all, substitutes for what sustainable consumption and production is all about. And really, the circular economy and is really sustainable consumption and production dressed up in a frock of economics. That's what it is, ultimately. It's trying to make it economically relevant, because we understand that once it's economically relevant, things will get done about it. What does it look like? It's clean production. It's sustainable use of raw materials. It's sustainable sourcing of raw materials. It's about energy conservation, water conservation, renewable resources. It is actually also about social equity. You can't have sustainable production if you don't have a healthy, educated, well-paid, engaged workforce. It is about social equity. It is about fair pay for fair work. So it's a far broader discussion than actually just materials. It's about property rights. Who owns it? When we're talking about ecosystem services and the resources and services provided by our natural environment, whether it's the air industries take in or whether it's the water they remove from the lakes and the rivers for their production, that they're public goods, So who's assigning the property rights to these public goods? And that's something we have to resolve as well. It's about needs versus want. We do need to consume. We need food, we need medicine, but there's also this other kind of dark side of us all. There's the want side of us all, and marketers are very expert at convincing us of all the things we want, and our consumption is excessive, and the quality and particularly the quantity of our consumption is unsustainable, and a lot of this is invested in this concept of what it means to be prosperous. What is prosperity? There's an enormous amount of vanity currently stitched into what prosperity is. I'm kind of a fan, really. Let's bring back the tax on windows. I think that was in the last century sometime. But big houses, the amount of raw materials that go into it, they're totally unsustainable to heat and build and whatever. And big cars. I'd love to ban every car over 1.6 litres in the state. Why couldn't you? Why can't you deal with a car that's 1 ton of materials, like an Escort or a little Clio, or 1.5 tons like a Fiesta or a Megane or something like that? Why do you need a 3-ton Jag? Why do you need a 3-ton Uber Cruiser? You don't. It's the materials in it. It's just not sustainable. So I vote to ban all cars over 1.6 litres in the state. There is a vanity, and one of the key challenges we have as a society to deal with sustainable consumption and production is to get over ourselves and what it means to be prosperous. We really have to, because we're not going to crack this nut until we realize that I have enough, I'm happy, I'm healthy, the kids are educated, there's possibilities of work, And across Europe, sustainable consumption and production, we've done very well from the sustainable production side of the house. We have lots of really good legislation on eliminating dangerous chemicals, POPs, PCBs. We have best available techniques and technologies for industrial operations, urban wastewater treatment plant regulation, waste management regulation, emission standards, industrial pollution control through the Industrial Emissions Directive and IPPC, REACH, the registration of chemicals, and ROSH, the restriction of hazardous substances in products. So it goes on and on and on. Europe has done really well in trying to tackle the sustainability of elements of our production process. We've really done bugger all about consumption, actually, in Europe, And we're really quite less successful. We have an eco-design directive which only extends to white goods, electrical goods that are in your house, where the eco-labelling and things like that. But really, we need to extend that across all products and all manufacturing. We have certain other things to do with consumption, like a carbon tax or energy. We're trying to introduce paying for water. We're not doing very well on that, but I mean it's a no-brainer really in my book. Okay, we have food waste regulations, trying to encourage people to separate their food if they have to waste the food in the first place. We throw away 30% of the food we buy, which is insanely immoral, actually. And we have plastic bag levies. So we've tinkered around the edges how to influence consumption, but really we've a long way to go. It's quite the poor horse in this race. So what can we do? What can we do about sustainable consumption and production in Ireland? What's achievable for us? Well, firstly, environmental harmful subsidies. We need to investigate what they are and eliminate all environmental harmful subsidies. Why are we subsidising peat production for energy? We are subsidising, and with due respect to the farming community, but they get tax write-offs on buying big farmers. What we discovered when we did some work last year, most farms are over-mechanised for the size of the farm they have. They're buying kit that's way too big for their acreage or their hectareage. Mainly because they can write it off against taxing. So there's lots of things about how we subsidise production processes that don't promote sustainable consumption. Green public procurement. We have an enormous opportunity in the state through managing how the state, local authorities, and indeed how you consume, to influence production. So we can, through GPP, Green Public Procurement, drive a greater awareness about people trying to flog stuff on the Irish market, that this is the way it ought to be done, or build things, Our major national road structure, if we just required that all of the raw materials that go into our road, our motorway network, was 10% recovered material, it would eliminate all of the C&D waste in the state. Very easily done. So other things we can do that are a little bit challenging for us are eco-design and eco-labelling. That's really a global trade and marketing, and Europe has a better chance of it. We couldn't go do a solo run on that here in Ireland, but we certainly, as part of our European community, drive the need for eco-labelling, clear marketing for marking on products for consumers. And in Ireland, let's look at a lower VAT rate for secondary derived raw materials. Why not incentivise the secondary resources market? Corporate social responsibility is something, and Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation produced something last year. We can certainly, with our larger corporates here, work with them to drive CSR initiatives and engagement with the UN Global Compact. So the final point is a few other things. Of course, education, property rights. We've got to get property rights. Who owns what? Who owns the seaweed on the shore? Who owns the fish in the water? We've got to assign property rights if we want to be properly understand the need, the sustainability objective, and the full cost of our goods. And of course, as mentioned earlier, we've got to measure progress, and that's something the EPA can do. We're quite happy to step up and measure progress, see how we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Johnathan. Mindy O'Brien, coordinator. Come around this way, Mindy. Coordinator for us.
I guess I just want to do a retrospective of what's happened in Ireland over the last few years in terms of initiatives and studies that have been put forward towards sustainable production and consumption. They've issued several reports. We've had Towards a Resource Efficient Ireland, Resource Efficiency Roadmap, Green Procurement Guidelines, the National Waste Prevention Plan. There are a lot of great reports out there, so the main thing is implementation. I think we need fewer studies and more action right now, and try to figure out what are the steps to take to create a better Ireland. And also hearing about the first goal too, I see there's some crossovers as well between the goals. We're talking about food waste, talking about people are going hungry. In Ireland, we're wasting 1 million tons of food each year. Meanwhile, we have 10% of the population going hungry. Similarly, we're wasting 1.3 billion euros, 1.3 billion tons of food, and 1.3 billion people are going hungry. So if you have a better consumption patterns and better production, it also crosses over to help the other goals, achieve the other goals. I mean, there's several initiatives out there. You have the green business, you have green enterprise, you have green hospitality, you have the Stop Food Waste initiative, I think, which has been very good. It has not been fully financed. They've been doing great initiatives on the ground, getting communities to reduce their food waste. You also have individual or small organizations, private charities, private initiatives such as the repair cafes, the Upcycling Ireland. You also have food charities. You have Be a Food Initiative. You also have Food Cloud, which is taking surplus food from supermarkets and distributing it to charities. So you have initiatives out there that are doing great work, but more needs to be done. Well, first of all, I want to go back about how much are we consuming, and it was at the Ireland conference, they're saying Ireland's consuming 3.2 planets worth of goods for our size, which is phenomenal. So I think we do need more action. And as Hans was saying, we need investment. The waste prevention earmarks 15 cents per individual to invest in waste prevention activities. I mean, that's only about a little over 600,000 invested, which is just a pittance. And if you look at other countries, you look at Zero Waste Scotland, they're investing £25 million each year for zero waste initiatives to kind of look at more sustainable consumption. During the workshops are the challenges. What are the challenges that we're facing? How do we change behavior of individuals, of communities, of businesses, of the government? You know, how do we promote the circular economy, resource efficiency, and prevent waste? And are there enough incentives to encourage businesses to reduce their waste and to have more eco-design? What can we do to incentivize them? And do our existing waste management regime promote waste prevention? Our recycling techniques, right now a lot of waste management companies are, you just put all your things, all your recyclables into one bin. You put your paper, your plastics, your aluminum cans. Problem is that it's not a really effective way of doing it because everything contaminates. And so this is a waste of valuable material. So I'm going to go, so we have lots of challenges and there are a few proposals. Thing is, we need a paradigm shift in businesses and how they do business. We need a top-down direction from the government. I think the government needs to use economic instruments. Johnathan was talking about certain economic instruments for the VAT reduction for use of secondary materials, but also using deposit refund schemes for drinks containers, but also for batteries, tires, WEEE. Right now people pay money for the management of WEEE at the end of its life cycle. I propose you turn it around that people pay a deposit on WEEE that they recover when they return the waste electrical equipment. Tax on single-use containers. People are going out to eat, they get all the takeaway containers and that's just thrown away. It's used for 10 minutes and it's thrown away. That's not a proper use. That's not a good use of resources. In Belgium, they have a picnic tax. So they're taxed on these sort of items to encourage people to use reusable containers. Extension of the plastic bag levy to all single-use bags. government is spending 8 billion euros on producing services and materials for the government. That's huge purchasing power, and the government needs to step up and take leadership role. In Holland, they have over 90% green procurement, and they figure they're going to meet their climate change goal, their reduction in greenhouse gases solely through solely through green procurement practices. So that's another linkage between sustainable consumption and, climate change issues. So we need a top-down, but also we need a bottom-up approach. We need to pilot zero-waste communities, get communities to engage in what activities they see that they can reduce their waste production. In Italy, they reduced their per household waste from 320 kilograms to 58 kilograms in 12 years. I think it can be done here. So let's start looking to pilot some zero-waste communities around the country.
Thanks.